Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. If you're new here, my name is Anna, and on this channel, I'm sharing our journey of learning how to turn our home into a homestead. Today, we are going to be dehydrating pineapple. I've done this a few times, but it's been quite a while since I have, and we ran out of the dehydrated pineapple in our pantry, so it is definitely time to get some more on the pantry shelf. This stuff is delicious. If you've never tried it, it's just like candy. You can make it several different ways. You can use the whole rings, you can dehydrate just small pieces. You don't even have to get the real big pineapples, you can do just the cans of the pineapple. And you can cut it, if you're doing it at home by yourself, you get to determine what you get in the end. If you want the smaller chunks, you can do the smaller chunks. That's really good for like adding into like baking and things like that, or for snacking on. You can also do the big round ones. Those are great for snacking on as well. You can just, if your kids are wanting something kind of sweet, you can give them that instead of candy. And you can also cut them really thick and it'll be a bit more gummy, so to speak. Or you can also cut it very thinly and you can make like little pineapple chips. So there's all different kinds of options that you can use, and I'm probably going to do a bit of a variety with them because I just want to have different stuff. For more dehydrating, canning, fermenting, and the occasional gardening and chicken video, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that like button if you do, and let's get started. First thing that we're going to do is just break down all these pineapples. I have, how many do I have? I have 6? I have 5 pineapples. I got these at Costco probably about 3 weeks ago. They were not ready yet. If you ever buy much produce at Costco, oftentimes you have to kind of buy it ahead of time because it's definitely not ripe. Usually. Sometimes you can get lucky, especially with the mangoes. It's hit or miss whether they're ripe or not. So basically, I don't have any special ninja skills as to how to pick up the pineapple. I know you want to make sure that it has some coloration to it. Like this one here is nice and colorful, but I found that if it has a little bit of mold on the bottom, weirdly enough, it tends to be ripe. I mean, you don't want it to be like a mold factory, but some mold on the bottom is pretty good for it. So some of these might have gone a little bit too long, but we'll find out. And we can weed through it and just pick out the good pieces. It's very visually evident which parts are good and which parts are bad. They're just a totally different color. And we are setting aside the peels and things like this because we're going to make, coming up here pretty quick, we're going to make a drink out of it. It's called, forgive me if I mispronounce it, but tepache. And it's like a fermented Mexican drink. You can turn it into a soda, and it should be pretty good. I've been wanting to try it for a while. So just cutting off the top, cutting off the bottom. There we go. That's a little better looking. This one, you can see it had some funk, but once you get past a little bit, it's just fine. So this one, we're just gonna kind of quarter it because I want to make sure it's okay on the inside and it's not too shabby. So I'll just take it like that. Cut out the core so we can add it to our tepache. Scraps. There we go. There we go. That's perfect. So, and then I'm also going to kind of go through and clean it up a bit. Like you can see that there's some pieces that were left behind. I know there's some fancy ways that you can go through and kind of get this out, but I'm just going to cut it out. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut these up. I think that's probably a good size. So we're going to cut these in 8s. So these are just going to be pineapple chunks. So one down. Okay, so for this one, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the rounds, a bit thicker of the rounds. So there's not gonna be like chips. These are gonna be about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna go ahead and just take a knife and kind of cut out the core. If you have like a little paring knife, that's obviously ideal for this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be as perfect as you care for it to be. So the next thing that we're going to do with this is we're going to cut it up with a mandolin. So really thin slices, and we're not going to core it. We're going to just cut it up into nice. There we go. Okay. So we're just going to cut this up into nice thin slices, and we're not going to core it or anything. And we're just going to make like pineapple chips. Nice thin little slices. And this one is going to take up a lot of dehydrator trays, so make sure you have the dehydrator space before you do it. Now you don't need the mandolin to do it this way, just cut it up thinly. It's just easier with the mandolin. So for the other two, we're probably just going to cut them up into kind of like the chunks, but just a little bit smaller. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm basically just going to be cutting these into 1/16ths, like really small pieces. Now that we have all of our pineapple on the dehydrator trays, what I'm going to do is I have an Excalibur, and so I have a bit more control over the exact temperature that we're going to dehydrate this at. My goal is to keep this as a raw food. My reason for doing that is that pineapple has an enzyme in it called bromelain, and that is, correct me on the pronunciation, but it's basically I think it's a protease type of enzyme, and what that is it helps you to digest food, and particularly proteins. It helps to kind of break down the proteins, and if you heat this for too long or too high of a temperature or for too long, then it can break down that enzyme and totally removes its ability to actually do anything for your digestion. So if we cook this at 104 degrees, it will preserve the enzymes that are in it much better than if you were to dehydrate this at a higher temperature. I was reading something and it said that at 104 degrees, 100% of the enzyme is preserved. And if you bump that up to 124 degrees, I think it was, then after a fairly short period of time, then it had only 83%. And if you bump that up to 176, then it's all gone. So I'm going to cook this at 104 degrees, and I will let you know how long it actually takes. I'll anticipate it will take at least 24 hours, if not longer. The chips, probably not quite as long, but everything else, it should be at least a day. So I'll bring you back and I will tell you how long it took, and we'll also do a little bit of a taste test. So it's been a couple of days since we left the pineapple to dehydrate. And now we're just going to go ahead and peel it off of the dehydrator sheets here and put it away for storage. I tried to keep track of how long this stuff took, but since it was being done at such a low temperature, I kind of lost track of how many times I had to reset the dehydrator. If I had to guess, I'd say it was probably about 36 to 40 hours at 104 degrees. I never went above it. And that's probably about how long it took. And if I had cut these more evenly, it probably wouldn't have taken quite as long. And the thin ones that we kind of just sliced, those ones were super quick. Those were probably, I guess I shouldn't say super quick, but they were probably about 24 hours. And then these bigger, kind of thicker ones, these ones are definitely what took so long. It took a really long time. Especially like one of them in particular took forever. So we're just kind of throwing these in the jars here. And one thing to note is that this is one of those dehydrator recipes that you kind of do a lot of testing on. Taste testing, I mean. They're delicious, and you just kind of snack on them as you're walking by the dehydrator. You just kind of grab one and munch on it. And so you know, if you are trying to preserve the enzymes in it and you're cooking it at a low temperature, or not cooking it, but dehydrating it at such a low temperature, it's not going to get crunchy like you might with other things. Even these little thin things, they didn't get very crunchy. They kind of maybe did a little bit, but not really. And these things are just, they're stupid tasty. They're like mangoes. They're right up there with mangoes. I don't know which one I prefer better, more. Probably mangoes, but they're right up there. Like, it's, if I had to pick, I don't know if I could. They're just super duper amazingly delicious. And a couple of these were cut thicker, and they're not quite ready, but it's so few of them that I'm not gonna make the whole dehydrator tray go for longer. I'm just gonna pull them off and I'm gonna eat them, because I can do that. One thing that is, if you're doing a lot of dehydrating, one thing that you probably want to invest in at some point is a pack of these little dry packs. And these help just to absorb any moisture that's left over, and it just kind of, it helps preserve it and keep it from like molding or doing any kind of funky stuff. And you can also get an oxygen absorber. We just do the dry stuff. And you can also take the added step if you want to, and you can hook this up to, if you have one of those, vacuum sealers with the little KitchenAid with the mason top attachment, you can suck all the air out of it, and that would also help to preserve it a bit longer. But with these, it's probably not going to last very long. They're super tasty, just that nice little snack to munch on here and there. And so that's probably what it's going to end up being mostly, and that's pretty much why I bought it. Just to have some, some extra sweetness in the pantry that's not like processed, funky, nasty sugars. So, with this recipe, I definitely recommend trying it and doing it. It's great, especially if you have kids in the house that really just, hound you for sweets. You can give them some pineapples or, mangoes or any kind of dehydrated fruit is just amazing, and most kids are gonna like it. Another thing you can also do with this is puree it and turn it into like a fruit leather. This would be a great texture. Like, you don't even have to add anything to it to turn it into that. You just puree the mangoes, or I got mangoes in mind. I'm doing mangoes next. But you can just puree the pineapple up and put it in the fruit leather trays, and it's just delicious. So with these, cooking them at such a low temperature, we have preserved the enzymes that are in it. It's also not going to be very crunchy, and it took a really long time to actually do. So you kind of just have to weigh the pros and cons, figure out what you want when you're dehydrating. If preserving the enzymes in it or keeping it as like a live food is important to you, then the extra time, I'm sure, is worth it. And it is for me, and that's why I did it. But if you don't really care about that, you can totally crank the heat up to 135, which is the normal fruit and vegetable setting in my experience. And that'll take a lot less time. It'll probably take like, I don't know, 12 to 18 hours, I would guess, depending on how thick you cut them. So just kind of That's the beauty of making all this stuff at home. You can do whatever you want to do with it. You can make it however you want it, and you can also add things to it and make it flavored and just do all sorts of things. Your imagination is your only limitation, pretty much. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.